You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. Perspective. What a lovely thing perspective would be. And what a terrible thing it is not to have it. At the risk of feeling disengaged with a dreary contemporary reality, you and I are stuck, mired in perspective. So much so that I sometimes think the only way to disengage, or even to engage less ferociously, and certainly politically, is to think about life in the country. Not this country, to be sure, at least not at this time. I mean really life in the real country, like on a farm, where I spent quite a few months some time ago, you may be surprised to hear. So today my guest for the conversation is Linda Rhodes, a woman, an author, and a veterinarian, one of the pioneers starting out back in the 70s and 80s, when the idea of a woman veterinarian was enough to send old farmhand males guffawing with ridicule. She trained to be a large animal vet when vanishingly few women were admitted to vet school, and most large animal vets were men. Her practice was in Utah and Idaho, where she earned the nickname Lady Cow Vet from Mormon dairymen. How she braved all that and a shaky marriage and more, and who she became, breaks more barriers than in the barnyards. Her memoir, Breaking the Barnyard Barrier, A Woman Veterinarian Paves the Way, tells the story. And I'll return with that story and our conversation in just a moment after this brief message. Subscribe to this program on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. Follow us on Twitter at WMC Live, like our Facebook page at facebook.com/WMC Live, and visit us at WMCLive.com for more information about our show and our guests.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Linda Rhodes, welcome to Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, this is the first time ever. I think it may not be the last time, but the first time certainly that a woman veterinarian expert has been on the program, and I welcome you especially. I'm honored to have you. And that you also knew of Sisterhood is Powerful way back in the 1970s is an additional delight. Wow. Well, you've done this remarkable book, my dear. I mean, and you're quite a good writer too. I mean, which I shouldn't say with such surprise, but being a writer, I have this snobbishness about people who aren't and who think they are and who sometimes bat off a book or two. But this is really good, and I read it from cover to cover. It's called Breaking the Barnyard Barrier, A Woman Veterinarian Paves the Way. And it is both frightening, given the opposition that you had from dairy farmers, from Mormon dairy farmers in Utah. Oh my God. Straight on through to all of the large animal, ranchers or owners, who had a tremendous resistance to any woman even walking into the paddock. And I took special pleasure in it because I spent quite a bit of time at one stage of my life in New Zealand dealing with goats.
Oh, goats. Yes, goats is what started my whole journey into veterinary medicine.
That's right. And Saanen and these were Angora goats. We were breeding Angora goats. So I learned many, many things, which I recognized with delight in the book. I mean, I learned,
Nice.
Foot baths and fly strike powder and um, uh, well, you name it, the whole thing. I learned how very clever they are. I don't know whether cows are as intelligent as goats, but of course,
No. Goats are the top of the ruminant intelligence
they're
scale.
very, very,
They are
very
very smart, and they are able to read people. They notice your expressions and your movements. They
right.
can also get out of any enclosure you try to keep them in. They're
Oh,
very
tell me about it. Yeah. And
goats are great.
the babies go down in the blackberry bushes and get all tangled with their fleece, and then let out plaintive, pathetic little cries in the middle
They
of the night.
cry almost like a human baby cry. Yeah.
Yes, it is. It is. It is.
Oh, isn't that
So,
funny that you have goat experience, Robin? I would have never expected that. You are a very interesting person.
well, thank you. I mean, I would never have expected to have it myself. I don't know what good it does me when I would take the subway in New York City, but it was a fascinating experience, and I came to really love those animals. I mean, particularly the kids were just um, when they play with all four of their feet up in the air because they're just dancing.
Yeah,
It,
they
it,
jump.
it is
But I have to say, I think having experience with animals does give you a set of skills that's useful in a city environment or in any environment because you have to be observant. You have to notice because
that's
they can't
true.
talk to you. So you have to really notice a lot of details about their behavior, about their what they look like, about their just how they act, and you become a better observer. And I'm sure that's helpful for you as a writer. I'm sure it's helpful in terms of interpersonal relationships. I think it really gives you a set of skills that you may not be aware of, but that are important.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, I would never have sought the experience myself, but a friend was involved in goat farming, and I came down on a number of trips, and then I went down at one point for a 3 month stay, which was really something. And but so I learned everything from baling hay to,
Fun.
as I say, fly strike powder uh, and and kidding and putting the bucks in with the does in order to
For breeding.
facilitate kidding. Yeah, I mean, and there were, of course, you also learn the different personalities, which teaches you a lot about human beings, I might add. But the different personalities, the individual personalities of the goats are quite amazing. They are distinct. They are very
Yeah.
specific. You know that's Jean over there, and she's doing. Oh my God, look at her! She's up to it again, and they're very clever and quite witty. I mean, so I have a whole new respect for animals. I must say, I previously had just been a cat person, but this now is very different. But let's talk about you. So you blithely chose to be a large animal vet, which made it all harder for you. You couldn't have chosen something like, I don't know, insects. I mean, um, no, no, no. You went for the big stuff and were bucked literally by men every step of the way, weren't you?
Yeah, it was back in the time when there were very few women veterinarians overall. Actually, it's kind of relevant to what's going on today with Title IX, because most vet schools would only accepted either none or two women. They figured if you can't just have one because they've got to have somebody to be their lab partner, and none of the
Huh,
guys would do that.
yeah.
So they either accepted, less than a handful of women in each class. Classes would be about 85 to 90 people, and it would be maybe two women or one woman.
Mm,
And and in 1973, when Title IX was passed, and the federal government said you can't discriminate, the vet schools woke up and realized that they had to start admitting more women. So that was the pivotal year. And I started at University of Pennsylvania in 1974.
uh-huh.
So I was right on the cusp of a major change in how many women were in the profession. But still there were very, very few women who wanted to do large animals. So when I was in vet school, I had to really push to get the experience that I needed to become a dairy vet. And
What drew you to large animals?
well, when I graduated college, I went out to California and I lived on a women's commune
Right.
uh, with goats and chickens and a couple of pigs and sheep. And um, I would, for room and board, I was milking the goats and feeding the animals and cleaning out the barn, and I learned all those skills, and I just loved it. Really enjoyed being with the animals. I loved the physicality of it, that I was,
Mm,
that really using my body, that I was outdoors. And I thought, this is so much more fun than sitting in an office somewhere. And I really
of
hadn't
course.
figured out what I wanted to be when I grew up, but after a couple of years on this commune, I realized whenever the veterinarian came, I would follow him around and watch what he did. And I thought, and I was really a science nerd when I was an undergrad, and I took a lot of
Aha.
chemistry and physics and mathematics, and I really liked the logic science kind of part of my brain.
Mm,
So I just kind of thought in this, I thought, well, if I want to be in the barn, what kind of, but I really like science, what kind of work can I do that's going to combine those two interests? And being a veterinarian seemed like the most logical choice. I didn't know at the time that it was hard to get into veterinary school, but much harder than to get into medical school.
yeah.
Um, so I just blithely said, I'm going to go to vet school. And and I wrote actually a whole section of the book on how I made that decision and how I had to take pre-vet courses and how I was discouraged all the way along and how I applied. But my memoir is too long, so I cut that, and that's now sitting in a pile somewhere that will be another book at some point. But
Oh, well, I'm very glad to hear that it will be another book because this is very well written. Yeah.
but that's
Well,
you know that's why I ended up wanting to be a vet, is that I was just I could use the science part of my brain, which I love to do, and I could be in the barn,
mhm,
and that was my goal.
that's
And the
it.
best
Very.
way of doing that was focusing on dairy. And
Aha. In
so
well, in you write in the afterwards that uh, in the 1980s, when just one or two women were involved, it was almost equal. I mean, that was it. That was it. Um,
yeah, it
uh,
changed.
but
It changed.
today, interestingly enough, more than 80%, you write, of veterinary school
Yeah,
graduates are women. And women are thriving not only in clinical veterinary work, but in leadership roles. So there are women deans and women heads of the
yeah,
Association of Bovine Practitioners and, women in leadership positions. So this is very good news. On the other hand, it's interesting because if you're into women's history, you realize that every time women enter a field, men abandon it.
yep. And the compensation goes down.
Exactly. Oh yeah. Yeah, it disappears.
They get paid less. So there's a gender gap in
Uh,
veterinary medicine. Women veterinarians get paid 80% of what men do.
Uh-huh. Well, isn't that
And
ridiculous? My
and
God.
that's exactly what happened. When the profession feminizes, women get paid less and men abandon the
And
field.
their excuses are amazing because originally, you see, men had to be secretaries because it was a machine. And we all know that men are technical and they do machine things, and women can't handle machines. They're clicking, making sounds with when you press it. Oh, good grief, no. So, and then out of sheer necessity, and women began to enter the field, and
Yeah,
then it became a woman's field. So
yeah.
secretaries are always female. So the same is becoming true of veterinarians. My only hope is that we take over absolutely everything, and then in that case, the men can't
I mean,
complain.
it happened in teaching, it happened in
That's
nursing.
right. Yeah.
Um, yeah, it really changed. And I think the other frustration is that it was not a linear path. I mean, it's
Mm,
not the leadership roles that women are assuming now, in greater numbers. It doesn't mean that it's going to stay that way. And one of the things that you see is backsliding. So
mhm,
as the culture changes, there's still more men than women in those senior positions, and there's a little bit of backsliding. So I I, I went to a talk by a wonderful woman who won the Nobel Prize for developing the first treatment for leukemia.
Mhm.
Can't remember, I wish I could remember. I can't remember her name, but somebody said to her, so now, women are in leadership positions in the pharmaceutical industry and things are looking up. And she just said, no, 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 don't get complacent,
Exactly.
because it can backslide, and don't assume that it's just all, it improves every year, because you have to keep fighting. You have to keep aware. You have to keep pointing out the discrimination that happens. And it's very true.
Well, and particularly at this point in U.S. history, it's not only U.S., but it was worldwide. But things are so bad
Yeah,
for women and other living things,
yeah,
that it's desperate. I mean, and we're doing everything we can. People ask me, "What are you doing about this and about Trump and I say everything, because
yeah,
there's nothing we're not doing. I mean, different groups are doing different things. We're doing, you name it.
yeah,
But when we look at things like, well, Minneapolis is happening right now. Um, uh, but it isn't only Minneapolis, of course.
yeah,
It's everything in every direction that you look at. It's a very scary time.
yeah. I mean,
And
even this morning I was listening to an analysis of the relationship between the Minneapolis police and the federal, goons that are there.
yeah,
And his remark was, there's too much testosterone floating around.
yeah. Well, it's true.
And I thought, oh my God, that is such a clear analysis of what the problem is.
That's
And
right.
and to hear a senior police officer say that
Hmm.
is quite remarkable.
Yes, it is. And my only hope is that there are enough of him to begin to slow the stop, if not stop, then slow the wheels
Yeah,
on this discharge of testosterone, which is
yeah, it's
huge and everywhere. I mean, and of course inspired by the guy at the top. So it's a very scary time, and it's a scary time. I can say this especially to you because you're of nature of being, by your work and by who you are, you're an environmentalist as well. Then you know that the environmentalist scientists are saying that there's only about 5 years or 6 years until it's irreparable.
it's
I mean,
over at the tipping point. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it's hard to maintain some kind of optimism in the face of so much dark
it
energy.
is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one of the things that I hope people get from the book is that perseverance matters, and
Mm,
not getting discouraged matters. And one of the things that was really heartening for me is that the dairymen that I worked with, who were, it was all male, they'd never seen a woman vet, they didn't know what to make of me,
mm,
but they came around, and just showing up and having a smile on my face and doing the work and being competent. They really came around,
yeah.
and without their acceptance, I would not have been able to have the practice that I had or make the living that I was making. And I spoke to one of the old,
Showing up really helps. Yeah.
just showing up, and also showing up with a good heart,
Yes.
with a reason to be there to help them. And after about, I don't know, 6 months or so of this, the kind of wise old man who's had three sons, all of whom had their own dairies, and they all were working with me. I said to him, how is it that you guys are willing to accept me? Because, you're all your wives are in the kitchen and
Right.
doing traditional stuff. And he said, Linda, we wouldn't care if you were, purple with green spots from Mars. If you showed up and took good care of our cows, we would support you.
But he's not common yet. Let's put
Yeah,
it.
but
But
even an
he
old
does
crust,
exist. He does
yeah, even an
exist.
old crusty Mormon guy up in Idaho, it was remarkable.
Yeah.
It was really remarkable. And he had three sons, and they now have multiple sons, and that kind of spread. So, it's not hopeless.
No, no, no. It's not. It's not hopeless. It's very difficult. I mean,
Yeah.
and it's more difficult now than it has been. I mean, I did not think that when I was in my 80s that we would be at this stage. I kind of thought we'd be better and further along. But anyway,
Yeah.
we're whatever it is, we're at this stage, and we have to keep pushing. It makes for a more checkered path, but it is still, let me put it this way, it is still not undoable, if you know what I mean. I mean,
Yes.
I have to phrase it as a double negative.
I think there's going to be a lot of crises, but we're going into a new world, and the climate change is going to force a lot of changes that people aren't even thinking about now. I mean, I see, I have a son
Talk
who's
about that. Yeah.
well, I have a son who's 34 years old, and he and his wife have bought a house, and I hope they're thinking about starting a family because I'd love to be a grandmother. Um, but the life that they're living now, I don't think is going to be possible in 20 years. I think there's going to be a huge climate migration of people coming from the places that are too hot to live or
Right.
too near the ocean, and there's too much flooding, and everybody's going to come north to the northeast to where the Great Lakes are, where there's a lot of water. There's just
Hmm.
going to have to be a real transformation of how we live on the land and how we deal with our communities and our neighbors. There's going to be transformation,
Yeah.
one or the other.
Yeah.
Um, and when I bought a house in New Hampshire about 12 years ago and had some renovations done, the architect asked me, what do you think is going to be happening in this house 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 50 years from now, just to kind of get a sense of how we're going to do the renovations.
Hmm.
But for 50 years from now, there's going to be 4 families living in this house. It's
Wow.
not going to be a single family. It's not going to be, it's a 4 bedroom house. There's going to be 4 families living here.
That's true.
The
That's true.
whole vision of each of us having our own big house and our 2-car garage, and that's going to go away.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right.
We're going to go, you and I probably won't be alive to see the really big transformation, but
Yeah.
you can see it coming.
Yeah. No, you can. And it's heartbreaking because and you think of then what it does to the animals as well at the same time, which
Yeah.
is just horrendous. Uh, and how the human population doesn't get it, still
Yeah.
doesn't get it to the extent that it still is farming and um, killing and uh, meat eating and uh, fossil fuel using. I mean, that it continues to do the same things under Trump. It does them even
Yeah.
more
Even
voraciously.
yeah.
And yeah, it's an amazement. It is completely amazing. So I can only hope that we pull something off at the last minute. I will say this, that our species, our human species, interestingly enough, I think it's most um how shall I say, its most enduring characteristic is um sustainability. I mean, is that we come up with things at the last
Yeah,
minute.
adaptability. Yeah.
Adaptability. That's the
Yeah.
word I'm looking for. Yeah.
Yeah.
That we come up with things at the last minute that are really quite unreasonable, and we can't. I don't know how you thought of that, but it works.
Yeah, it's really true.
And
I mean,
we do.
one of the things that gives me comfort, this is kind of a weird way to look at it, but I took a paleontology course at Cornell. It was like a week-long course in the summer. Um, and there's the area around there is known for their mastodon skeletons that they dig
Mm-hmm.
out from these kettle ponds and there's the huge mastodon skeleton in a museum there. And my teacher said, how long ago do you think these critters were roaming the earth?
Hmm.
And, I would think millions of years. And he said it was 12,000 years ago. And he said,
Really?
and he said, what happened was the glaciers came down from Canada, and where we're standing now, where we excavated this mastodon, was under like a mile of ice. And
Oh,
all these animals died. And many other animals died, and many species of plants died, and it was ice. It was like a mile of ice. And he said, then that when the ice receded, a different kind of life evolved and came in. But it was only 12,000 years ago.
That's yesterday.
And I thought, wow, so all these animals that were so amazing that, humans, I'm sure humans were hunting at the time,
Sure.
um, they all became extinct. And he said, if you think in that scale of, yes, we love our tigers and we love our baboons and we love our, all of our, beautiful zebras but
Hmm.
we mourn when animals are close to extinction, like the rhinoceros. But he said, you just have to think in the bigger scope of life comes and life goes, and
That's
different
right.
wonderful species evolve, and then they disappear and others evolve. And he said, then you don't feel so much like grabbing on to every beautiful animal that's threatened by human incursion.
Yes, yes,
And that
precisely.
helped me a lot in thinking about the fate of, extinction.
It's kind of a Robinson Jeffers emotion. Was a wonderful poet,
Yeah,
American poet. I don't know if you
yeah,
know his work, but there's a kind of mercilessness in his verse,
yeah,
that lets things go, and then doesn't welcome, but accepts the next thing that comes.
exactly.
And we need to develop that. It's these days in particular.
And I
But
think it's important in your personal life too. I mean, that was one
yeah,
of the things I tried to show in the book, is that I had to let go of my marriage
I was
because,
about to arrange that. Yes, I was about.
because of all the pressure of, being the only woman, and the whole burden of, if I didn't succeed, people would think that women couldn't do the job. And um, but by the end of the book, I think I show that I kind of come to peace with it, that I
You
made my
do.
choice,
No,
and
you definitely do. There's no question about that. But there's a very touching and instantly recognizable um, voice in you that gets quite cranky at times at having to do everything, to take care of everybody, to be there for him, your husband, to be there for your own family, particularly when your mother dies tragically, to take care of the dairy farmer that you're working for at that time, his cows, to take care of the cows, to take care, and it goes on and on. Your to-do list is so devastating that it exhausts you even.
yeah,
And when you're crawling into bed at 5 a.m., having to get up in 15 minutes for milking, it's not easy. None of this is easy.
it was tough. Yeah,
You
it
know.
was.
So I immediately, even though I did not have the same set of problems, I did with a husband have the same set of problems I did with a growing child. Yes, I mean, so there's enough familiar connection made that one recognizes that, but it's in different circumstances, and the circumstances are so heavy and appealing, and just devastating at times that you can hardly pull out of them. And when
But
you
one
do, we cheer you.
Oh, that's so sweet. Well, my Ron, the guy that I worked for,
Yeah.
had a wife named Kay. And when he would get an emergency call in the middle of the night, I mean, she had a full-time job,
Hmm.
and they didn't have children. But when he would get an emergency call in the middle of the night, she would get up with him. The phone would ring, she would wake up, he would wake up, he'd get up, he'd put his coveralls on, she would make coffee,
Hmm.
and she would ride in the truck with him to the call.
Hmm.
And she would help. She would hold the rope, she would hold the flashlight, she would run to the truck and get, the antibiotics that he needed. So
What
she
is
would help.
this? Women are born with this gene. I mean, what the hell is this?
And then if he was too tired, she'd drive home. She'd drive home from the call. And then he'd shed his coveralls and she'd put everything in the wash, and, I and I when I
Now,
read
was he the one who was having an affair meanwhile?
yeah, yeah.
Uh-huh.
And
Oh,
when I realized that this. I mean, I talked to Kay and she said, "Oh yeah, I go on all the emergency calls with Ron." I'm like, my husband just like he
Yeah.
hears the phone and he just rolls over and goes back to sleep. And he's like, "Oh, I'll see you in the morning."
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's no, it's and every woman in different ways experiences this. So sometimes, in your case and in my case, the only thing to do is to walk free. And
Yeah, you know,
I
I
haven't been
first figured,
happier since I'm happily divorced.
oh, me too. But you know, when I first kind of realized what was happening here, it was when I read in Sisterhood is Powerful, The Politics of Housework by Pat Menardi. I read that and it
Yeah.
was just like a light bulb went off in my head.
Boing. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was like, "Oh my God. This is it. This is what we're struggling with." And
Yeah.
it's not just me. It's women's what how women are treated in society. I must have read that 100 times and I'm telling you, I quote that to a lot of the young women that I mentor. I do a lot of mentoring of young women
Mm,
who are trying to balance, they just got married, maybe they had their first kid,
right.
their husband is not doing housework, and I quote this. I pull out my old copy and I read
Oh,
it to them. It's really important for women to realize that housework is political,
that's right. That's right.
and all
Absolutely.
of those chores,
The
all of those
the
things that you just kind of do reflexively. It's when the what drives me nuts is when the guys say, "Well, I help."
oh yeah.
And I'm like, wait a minute. When you say you help, what you're doing is you're assigning everything to your wife
That's right.
and
Yeah.
you're just helping. It's not like this is the stuff that has to be done and you're going to divide it up and
Oh no no no
have
no no.
responsibility for it. It's like, yeah, when you feel like it, you help a little bit.
Yeah. Wait.
That
Exactly.
just doesn't cut it.
Help with childcare is particularly amusing. I mean, because children are on 24 hours and 28 hours every day, 35 hours every day. So that's a particularly amusing one. But yeah, it's extraordinary. I mean, and there are versions of this all over in the international global movement. I remember going to a particular conference years ago, and a Japanese woman stood up and she said, very, very quietly and very politely, and she said, I think that Japanese men would not be able to go to work and would not be able, she said this in halting English, would not be able to function um, if we said at some point, um, uh, when they say, where are my underpants? We say, I don't know. And
I love it.
and the whole room collapsed in hysteria. I mean, everybody knew what she was talking about. I mean, so it just goes
Yeah,
on.
it reminds me of that routine. I think it was Rosie O'Donnell. She was like, "What is my uterus, a tracking device for all your
Yeah,
shit?"
yes. Oh, no, it's and it has to be. I mean, feminists sometimes worry that we repeat ourselves too much, that we have to repeat ourselves too much. But we do. I mean, and some of these things can't be said too often. Some of them have to be said again for the first time or for the first time.
Yeah.
I mean, we weren't dealing with internet, for example, and this incredible sexism on the internet. Excuse
But
me.
don't you find that I find that a lot of young women they
Mm.
are not aware of this kind of analysis. They have not read the feminist literature.
I know.
They do not think about housework as being political. They do not, they reflexively take their husband's name and they have the traditional wedding and they wear the stupid ring and they just, I mean, I say to young women often, why are you taking his name?
That's right. No,
What
no,
is that about?
and I know the daughter of a feminist, a very strong feminist. Excuse me. Um, who took her husband's name, and the mother was so mm, discombobulated by that. She couldn't believe that the daughter had taken, and so yeah. Well, there are usually periods in history that follow that follow expansive and progressive periods where people retrench and pull in a little
Yeah,
and try to and correct it. That doesn't always stick, thank God.
yeah.
But in these cases, it means we have to keep saying and keep doing.
Yeah.
That this is an intergenerational study, and movement, and keeps going in that direction.
Yeah, I felt like part of my job as a mother was to raise a son who was more aware.
Me too.
And that, that was hard work.
Hmm.
And going against the culture that we were living in, suburban culture we were
That's
living
right.
in. But I'm proud to say, we gave him a hyphenated name. So his last name was my last name and my ex-husband's last name.
Hmm.
And he married a girl with a hyphenated name.
This is making
So
for a very long name.
So then I was pleased to see that what they did is they each dropped one of their names and they hyphenated a new name.
That's wonderful. That's
And
lovely.
it was a lovely decision. And yeah, I was really proud of that.
Well,
So
that is
yeah. So
absolutely.
little steps, tiny little steps.
Well, I don't think they're so tiny anymore, and I think that they're quite impressive. And I think the book is impressive. And I urge people to read it. It is by Linda Rhodes, and it is called "Breaking the Barnyard Barrier." A woman veterinarian paves the way, and she does. She really does. And I hope that there are more books coming.
Well, Robin, I have to just say what an honor it is to speak with you. I'm so touched that you like the book, and it means a lot to me that you say the writing was good because you are a good judge of writing, I know, and you're a terrific writer. So I really appreciate that.
Well, my real pleasure. And the next time that you're thinking of doing a book, you have to let us know so you'll come back on the show. How about that?
That would be terrific.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We have to take a short break here, but I'll be back in just a moment, so don't go away. The Women's Media Center, founded in 2005 by Jane Fonda, Gloria Steinem, and myself, is a progressive, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization working to make women visible and powerful in media. You can learn more about the WMC at womensmediacenter.com.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Normalizing insanity is to welcome it into our lives. Those are fighting words and warning words. The Washington Post reported that ICE is planning to spend $100 million on another recruitment drive, which will include looking for prospective agents at places like gun shows. And The Atlantic reported last year that as part of the administration's efforts to swell its roster of ICE agents, training for new agents was cut by nearly 2/3. Let's leave aside for a moment how this had an impact of considerable severity on their inability to act properly. For example, Border Protection specifically was previously allowed to use race or ethnicity as part of the reason for stopping someone during immigration enforcement, itself a questionable reason, but it now seems that ICE is interpreting that recent Supreme Court ruling as giving them carte blanche to stop anyone based solely on race or ethnicity. Let's also leave aside the eradication of being drilled in accountability mechanisms, how to do crowd control without brutality, how to absorb legal training, including about their own rights and where their own rights ended and those of citizens began. Leaving all that aside, the training for new ICE agents was cut to just 47 days. Why 47 days? Well, the number was chosen because Donald Trump is the 47th president. Honest to God. The voracious, insatiable ego of the man truly knows no bounds, even unto the tiniest detail. That, let's remind ourselves, is insane. That, let's remind ourselves, is not normal. Normalizing insanity is to welcome it into our lives. And that's our show for this week. You can follow me on social media at The Robin Morgan. You can check out my blog at robinmorgan.net, and you can find my new novel, Parallax, and my just-out new book of poems, Harvesting Darkness, wherever books are sold. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Views expressed here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. Executive producer, as well as founding and sustaining sponsor, Regina K. Scully. WMC president and co-executive producer for this program, Julie Burton. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us. Join us next time on Women's Media Center Live.